welcome back to the Alizee Yeezy show. I am your host, Kyra, the dog. There we go for the audio listeners. That is indeed a dog in the studio. I am joined today by none other than Rachel Oates. Hello.
Hi.
Your dog has adopted me, I think.
Yeah, I think you're her new favourite auntie.
Oh.
And there's some stiff competition, so you're doing well.
So, Rachel is here today to educate me. Kyra, what are you doing? What is this? She's here today to educate me on topics and things. And the first topic is...
Let's do personality tests.
The Myers-Briggs tests.
Just kind of like all personality tests in general. Like, some are probably a little more accurate than others, but... So I did a video on this on my main channel, and it's something that I've been kind of like looking at covering for a while. It turns out, like, a lot of it's just a bunch of pseudoscience. So, like, the Myers-Briggs test, I don't know if you know this, but who do you think made it?
I know this because you already told me.
Damn it, okay.
2 bored housewives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But how did they create it? Were they bored housewives with psychology degrees? Or
No.
were they bored housewives who liked to watch Jeremy Kyle?
Well, it was the 40s, so not quite.
Oh, it was the 40s.
Yeah, not quite Jeremy Kyle time. Although I don't know, he's getting on a bit, so maybe he was around then. But yeah, they were like, oh, it's wartime. Middle-class women are joining the workforce. Let's find them the right jobs. So they created this personality test to be like, okay, what job is right for you? And they just kind of came up with it in their spare time based on what they knew about people and their own interests, their own personalities, their own neighbours that they knew. And over time, they did kind of bring in a few experts. Like, they worked with some people who worked in, like, testing, and they worked with people who kind of knew a little bit about psychology, but not a huge amount. And it became more of a thing. But ultimately, it was just this mother and daughter who were like, oh, yeah, we know about people. Let's put them into groups. And that was it. And that's why a lot of the questions are like, oh, when you're planning a holiday, would you rather do this or this? Or at a party, would you rather do this or this? Because it's very like middle-class white women. And it's like not really suited for anyone else. If you have a working-class Indian man, he's not necessarily going to be able to answer half the questions accurately because he's like, oh, I've never faced this stuff. Or like, I don't know, someone who lives in a village in the middle of Kenya. They're not going to be able to answer like half the questions because they're about like middle-class American living. So how can they be grouped into the same personalities? It's not universal, is the thing. But so many employers will use it to group people into these categories and be like, oh, are you suitable for this job or not? And it's kind of like asking, which kind of middle-class American person are you?
I didn't know that it was from the 40s. For some reason, I thought it was quite recent as the 90s. I'm not sure why. Because I feel like... Well, maybe I just wasn't aware of it. But then one day, everyone was doing it.
Yeah, there was a huge boost in the popularity of personality tests in general in like the 90s, early 2000s. And that's when way more of them were made. So you had like I think Hexaco test was made around that time, I want to say. I might be making that up. And then you also had people looking into like the 5... what they call it, like the 5 traits, the 5 aspects of personalities, and that does actually have some psychological backing, and so that kind of came to the forefront a little bit more as well. But even that's not it doesn't cover as much as you would like, because it's saying there's like 5 facets to personality, like how extroverted are you, how neurotic are you, how this, and it puts you on a scale. But that's like such a small part of your personality, you can't really encompass a whole thing in a little test. So I don't know, I thought it'd be interesting like, because where do you stand on them?
I don't really take them seriously.
Have you ever done one?
Yes, and my one was like E something something something, and it says on the definitely extroverted. It says on the website, oh, here's celebrities that also have your personality type, and my one is the same as Russell Brand's. So I was kind of like, oh, that's really cool, but I didn't give it any more thought. I've never put it in like a dating profile bio. I've never, publicized it in like, because I didn't really take it seriously. I just thought, oh yeah, that's neat. But then I don't know, surely there's more to people than than like these series of questions that are posed. You can't encompass like an entire person's being in 50 questions.
Did you ever have to do one of those like careers tests in school?
No, we never did.
You know, I got told I should work in education and childcare, and I was like, but I don't like children. I don't want to be around kids. And that wasn't on the test. So it was really, really odd. But I find personality testing is the same sort of thing. It puts you into these categories and says, like, oh, you should be doing this and this. But it misses out some really, like, fundamental questions. Like, hey, gorgeous. Sorry. So for me, like, the Myers-Briggs one also gave me, like, these career kind of trajectories it thought I should go down. One of it was, again, told me I should work in education, told me I should be a massage therapist, told me I should be a counsellor, and I'm like, I would be terrible at all of those things. So it's weird because on the one hand, like, some of the things that was describing in me were really accurate, and then others I was like, not a chance. So I don't know, I find it quite interesting. But have you ever had a job that's asked you to do it?
No.
You know?
No, never. I don't think I won't have any time for
No.
that. No way.
Yeah. No,
Have you?
No, but a lot of my friends have.
Is this a recent thing? Now do the personality Quizlet so we can see how well you fit into the office?
So a lot of us, like, would have graduated in what, like 2015, 2016 sort of time? I don't know. Like, out of my friend group, I mean, and they've all been asked to do it, but it's mostly like little startup companies that kind of like, you know, they want to seem sort of like hip and cool. So like, we're going to give you a personality test and see what your Myers-Briggs is to see if you'll fit into our little startup. And
No
it's like,
way.
yeah. It's really weird.
But that's, I mean, I don't want to say it's discriminatory because that's quite like that's too strong a word to use, but you can't base someone upon some questions.
No, it's really odd.
I mean, mine did say that I should be a performer or something.
There you go.
So that that made sense to me. So I like to cherry pick
Yeah.
little things. I mean, it's the same with like, I see that kind of stuff a bit similar to astrology.
Yeah.
You know,
I had people in my comments on my video saying it's like astrology for atheists.
Yeah, that
which
works.
I thought was kind of funny. But it is like, it's all full of Barnum statements. So mine told me that I'm introverted and I like to stay away from the spotlight, but I would make a very good performer if I wanted to. And I was like, so I can be in the spotlight if I want, but also not if I don't want, is what you're saying.
It sounds like it's vague
It
booking.
Really, yeah, it's a Barnum statement.
So you can just fit into...
Yeah.
I mean, but that's what, like, you know, the Mystic Meg Sun columns do. Like, today might be a good day. Depends on some stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have an all right day and you're like, oh, wow, my horoscope was
came
correct
true.
for today.
Yeah.
You're quite all right, Kyra. Just getting settled over there on a chair.
Yeah. Making your bed.
Stomping on the camera.
Bless her. I think
I
that's
like
a
how
good time
she
to talk
just-
about wolves.
I like how she just, like, does whatever she wants.
Yeah. Oh, baby.
I was just thinking when you were talking about the personality
Yeah.
test, and you know, the 5 types of personality, the thing that kept coming to my head just then, I'm not sure why, is the 4 humours. Which was
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
So that was kind of originally like, some people say that was
That's
one
the
of the first
original
personality tests. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
like you're either bile or blood,
Yeah. So
spit.
it started with like the 4 elements and stuff, and people would say like, oh, you're quite a fire element, you're like a water element, and then you get the astrology and people being like fire signs, water signs, and so on. And then from that it became like the 4 humors, so like bile, blood. That's kind of like sort of a progression from the elements to that, and then it all just kind of grew and grew, and then you have like personality types and astrology and Myers-Briggs and all sorts, and it's all just a big bundle of pseudoscience wrapped up in quite an official looking, you know, I guess front. Because a lot of the personality tests now, when you look on the websites, they all look really professional, and they'll say that they have people working for them who have like masters and doctorates and this and this and this, and they'll look like very, very clean and minimalistic. And a lot of it is just about the front that they put on. There's no actual scientific backing to them, but because they present it in such a way, they can charge companies an absolute fortune to do the testing. Mm-hmm. So like the Myers-Briggs Foundation, they make $20 million a year.
How? What from? Selling merch.
No, through doing the tests. They're like, we will do an official test for you, and you can do it online and pay 50 quid a time,
Right.
which is ridiculous.
Right.
Or they will go into like, they'll work with like big companies, like, you know, think like Morgan Stanley and the big banks and stuff like that, and like, you know, multi-million-dollar companies. They're like, yeah, we'll do personality testing on your current employees, on your new employees, on this and this, and then we'll have an expert review the results for you. And they'll charge literally tens of thousands to do that. And they make an absolute fortune. Because imagine what their expenses are. So little, because the experts aren't necessarily going to be paid a lot, are they?
I also feel that personalities aren't exactly frozen in time, are they? Because personalities can change depending on environment, new information that's given, that kind of thing.
Sorry.
Very nice. Kyra.
Thank you, baby. Calm. You can lie down for me. Yeah? You can lie down. What's your personality today?
Very extroverted, I think.
She is. She's a pure extrovert, this one.
But the thing about the four
sorry.
elements originally, I feel like that would be so much more fun because that's very Final Fantasy. It's very like Avatar.
It's like, oh yeah, I have the blood personality. It's like, oh well, I'm yellow bile.
No, the ones where it's like fire and water.
Oh, that one. Oh,
those
yeah,
ones.
yeah.
That'd be even more fun because it's
Yeah.
elemental and I don't know. I feel like it makes a little bit more sense.
Do you know your star sign?
Yep. Oh, yes. I just had an episode last week with a singer who's also interested in astrology. So we were discussing, because I'm an Aquarius, but
So you're a water sign.
I'm the most Aquarian. Like if you look up Aquarian traits, and I don't buy or follow this stuff, but when you look up Aquarian traits, it's like, yeah, that's pretty much me. Got that right. And she did like my sun and moon charts, and it was actually,
Oh, no way.
I mean, I like just talking about myself, so it was very interesting in that regard for me. But I'm quite open-minded, and I'll just listen to things. But yeah, I'm an Aquarius.
I am an Aries, and which is like a fire sign. I remember when I was a kid, I used to really love like looking at all the astrology stuff, and I'd read the descriptions for Aries and be like, oh, fiery, passionate, quick to anger. Oh, this isn't me. Like, oh, I'm not this. And now I'm older. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm just a big emotional mess. And like, I don't know if it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy where like I read it so much as a kid that I became that personality type, you know? Like, I don't think it actually has anything to do with when I was born, but I do wonder if there is that like self-fulfilling element to it. You know, it's interesting. What do you think, Coobs? Because what are you? You were born in March, so what are you?
What's a March star sign?
March 2nd. I think she would make a good Aries, or like a...
That's ruining my makeup, thank you.
She just wants to wear some lipstick.
Pisces.
Oh, baby, you're a Pisces. How do you feel about that? You're a water
the same
sign.
as my sister, but my sister's mental.
Yeah.
No offense.
Oh, well, there we go
She
then.
doesn't watch my podcast. I can say what I
Perfect.
like. My sister's mental.
Oh, Kyra's a bit mental. I think that works.
Yeah. Good work.
Hey, I see you. Watching us. Little grumbles. I really hope the mics picked that
She's
up.
such an expressive dog, and her little
She is.
ears, they're just so expressive.
Oh, God,
and
I
she's
love her
always
ears.
smiling. I was showing someone a picture of your dog. I was like, look at this dog. And she just has like the biggest smile in all the pictures. It's very, very sweet.
I love her eyebrows so much. She's really expressive. She'll like look at you and be like,
Well, we can get into
It's
that
great.
as well. We can lead
Oh my
on to
God,
that
yes.
because dogs
wolves
have
and
evolved.
dogs. Yeah. So that's not actually the bit I wanted to talk to you about. I was going to talk about like the sort of conservation of animals, but wolves are actually great. So, I think I have spoken to you briefly about this before, but fun fact for you: did you know that dogs' eyebrow muscle, like in domesticated dogs, has evolved specifically to manipulate humans?
So we find them cuter.
Yeah, it's great. Like, wolves don't have that. Older dogs, like, you know, generations back, didn't have that. It only started happening when we domesticated them, or as some argue, when they domesticated us. Some people believe that dogs saw humans, like, living in these little tribes, and I'm like, oh, they have an abundance of food. Maybe we should befriend them and get some free meals. And
I buy that. And then the ones
Yeah.
who look the cutest would get the free meals. I also buy that, like, cats did something very similar
Oh, probably,
as
yeah.
well.
But cats are way more manipulative, aren't they, Kyra?
Cats are nice too. Cats, they're very nice. Well,
That's what they want you to think.
one of them, he's very sweet. And the other one just, like, doesn't go near you, just runs away. I keep watching lots of dog videos on YouTube
Is it
recently.
like the dog cleaning ones? Like the grooming and the...
Well, I've been watching this channel called The Girl of the Dogs, and
Yeah.
she's a Canadian groomer, and just incredible. And also, fantastic channel idea because she's got 1 million subscribers already, and I think she started like this year. I mean, it's genius. Like 4-minute clips of washing like different dogs and giving dog facts. The internet loves that shit.
I think that's great. To be fair though, like, okay, I don't know if I've spoken about this publicly. It's a little bit embarrassing. My guilty pleasure is watching cleaning videos.
Like just in general, like cleaning houses.
Just anything. Like, I love watching dirty things get clean. So, like, carpet cleaning videos, best thing ever. Those like car detailing ones when they go through and like they hoover the cars and stuff. I love that stuff. People mopping dirty floors. I will watch it for hours. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you're not alone there. People love that shit.
I don't know why I find it so satisfying.
It's satisfying.
Oh, gorgeous. It is. I hate cleaning my own house, but I'll watch other people clean theirs.
I went for a phase of watching soap cutting videos.
Oh,
you know, where people like score the soap diagonally and then drag the blade down and all the little bits of soap fall off. I went for a phase of watching those, which is a bit embarrassing.
I quite like watching soap making videos. Come on, baby. So there's this channel called Royalty Soaps, and she makes like the prettiest little soaps, and it's all like cold process ones. So you watch her mix it up and then mix all the colours, and then she pours it, and she does this like swirly stuff, and it looks like absolutely nothing in the tray, and then she lets it set and she cuts it, and when she cuts into it and she like holds up that little slice, you're like, oh, it's magical. I love it. I don't know why I like it so much. It's great fun though.
Well, I've been watching on YouTube these like TikTok compilations of just dogs being dramatic or dogs doing whatever, and huskies are by far the most dramatic and most vocal.
God, they are. Yeah.
And I keep seeing this comment on videos like that, saying something along the lines of, and I don't know how true this is, I just see this comment repeated a lot, that huskies, so the parts of like a dog's brain, the part of the dog's brain that's in charge of communication in domesticated dogs, it has like evolved.
She's been a great little model for her.
Yeah, she's great. Since being around humans for so long, it's evolved. But huskies, like their part of the brain has evolved the most out of all the breed of dogs.
Really?
And like they're the most vocal. And basically people hypothesizing that maybe if you gave it a million years, huskies would be the first dogs to be able to communicate with us like efficiently. Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? I don't know how true it is, but it's just a comment that I've seen repeated. Have I fact checked? Fuck off. not bothering with that. I just thought, it makes sense. That's why they're screaming all the time.
Yeah, I could absolutely see it. But like animals communicate with us in so many ways, and a lot of people don't realise it. So like even her little snorts and stuff, sometimes they're just piggy snorts, but sometimes it's like she talks. I'll say something to her, and you'll snort in response, won't you? Yes. But like there's certain little noises she makes when she wants something, and like you get really attuned to it. So like I can be asleep, and if she makes a certain noise, I'm awake. I'm like, oh god, she needs to pee. You know, it's like it will wake me up from whatever sleep I'm in because I hear
like my
her
dad
little
and our
noises.
dog. Yeah.
You get so attuned to it, don't you? And like I don't think on a conscious level I know what those noises are. I couldn't like say, oh yeah, it's this sound. It's just when I hear it, I'm like, oh, I know what that means. Oh, I know she wants a biscuit. I know she needs to pee. I know she's grumpy with me because like I'm, maybe I like elbowed her in my sleep or something. Like I know all the little noises, don't I? So they do communicate. We just like, I don't know, we need a way to pick up on them, don't we? But actually, talking about why dogs are so intelligent, this makes this next story really, really sad. So, I figured we could have a rant about how terrible humans are by talking about wolves.
Always welcome. Love ranting about humans.
So how much do you know about Yellowstone National Park?
Not a lot, actually. It's in America, isn't it? Is it active? Is that the one that could just explode and we'd all be goners?
Yeah.
Nuke it then.
It's also...
Get rid of the problem, just nuke it. There you go. I'm sorry to interrupt. That just reminds me of one time, like I did a video about like insane people Facebook, and someone made this post on Facebook being like, tsunamis or hurricanes. Why don't we just nuke the hurricane? It was the most American thing you ever. I think one time like there was a hurricane and Americans just like shot at it, like for a laugh, but also the most American thing ever. This person was really going on like seriously on Facebook about how we should just nuke hurricanes, and sure there might be collateral damage, but if it's like some sort of non-American country, there's no big deal. I was just like, wow. Wolves, yes.
No, well, actually, on the topic of that, I saw like the most disturbing TikTok video the other day from this woman who she went outside to like take some photos of some lighting, and she saw like a tornado, like an actual like twister, in the street, and so she runs inside and she's like trying to wake up her husband and kids, and she's like, tornado, and the kids are all like running down to the basement. They get the dog in the basement like to try and shelter it, and the husband comes down. He's like, "You're being crazy. You didn't see anything. Why are you scaring the kids like this?" And he was like almost refusing to go in. Turns out, yeah, she did see one, and like half their street was just completely destroyed, gone in the morning. But this husband was just like proper making her think she was crazy, and it was the most disturbing thing I've ever seen. He was so like relaxed about it. It's like, no, of course you didn't see one. I was like, anyway, terrifying. I'm glad we don't have tornadoes here. Like that would be scary. Do you remember that earthquake a few years back? It was like 20 years ago now, which is like last week for me.
What was it I swear there was like some sort of earthquake that happened, but nothing really happened. Like something fell, like a bin fell over. Or was that a storm that we had? That's English news though. If there's like a storm, then in the papers there'll be pictures of like a bin falling over. It'll be like, oh, it's a carnage. Carnage in Hoxton. Like, the bins are everywhere.
Yeah, that sounds
It's a good thing we don't get tornadoes. We wouldn't be able to deal with it over here.
No,
we get
absolutely not.
If we get an inch of snow, everything shuts down.
Oh, yeah.
And other countries like to laugh at us, but we're not equipped to deal with. And it's weird because like in summer we keep getting heat waves as well. We keep getting like 40-degree heat waves, which again very few places here have aircon. We're not equipped to deal with the hot weather. Like so our government just doesn't give a shit.
It is odd. But there was an earthquake like a few years back, because it was when I was still living with my parents. I remember my bed had casters on it, like wheels, and the earthquake like shook the house so much that my bed like moved away from the wall, and I just woke up like, what is happening? I'm moving. That's the only like earthquake story I have. But yeah, that was fun.
That's about it for us. There was actually something I just remembered. I had this like thought, and it's probably ill-informed, uneducated, stupid, but I thought the best person to talk to about that would be you, right? Because it's about dogs and just so it's about dogs and humans and evolution, right? Because dogs, how long have they been domesticated for? 100,000 years? Well, actually, there have been like fossils found of like wolf prints next to like human prints that date like
it's really far
that.
back. I can't remember the exact date, but there's a great book called Dog's Best Friend, all about the relationship between dogs and humans. Really recommend it. It's good. But they talk about like domestication. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
No, sorry. So you've got like the humble wolf, and then you've got mad variations of dog, because you've got everything from like Great Danes to Huskies to Maskins, which are a recent breed, to Chihuahuas to like Yorkies to sausage dogs to Staffies. Such mad variation. And yet with humans, sure, we all have like a variation in melatonin and skin tone. Yeah. But that I don't understand how like with evolution, like you've taken the wolf, and I mean even with like big cats and domesticated cats, I swear there's just so many different breeds of dogs that are also like physically noticeably different.
Well, it's selective
how
breeding.
Has that happened? But then how is like humans sort of like we're all the same except for variations in skin color. Well, and some like facial features. Yeah. Obviously, like skin. I don't understand how we've managed to breed so many different types of dogs. That's my point. I just don't. It's madness.
Well, it's like selective breeding. So we specifically started breeding certain dogs to be like, okay, well, I want this one to have like a bigger nose, and you'd have interbreeding, and because their lifespans are so much shorter than us, you can get more variation over like the same period of time. So like 100 years of humans, you're gonna have like 3 generations. 100 years of dogs, you have like not 20 generations, but like 12 generations maybe. So that's more kind of generations, so more differences in that time. Or does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining this properly.
It makes sense, but then it makes me think of animals who seemingly have evolved very little over mass like spaces of time.
That's because it works for them, and they're just kind of like doing what comes naturally. Humans have interfered with dogs and been like, I am going to pair you and you to get this feature, and we're going to have all your kids have this feature, and then I'm going to pair you with someone with this feature to get this feature. And it's all very calculated. Like if you just let dogs breed amongst themselves, you end up with like the modern day wolves that we have now, which, there are different species and stuff, but there's still not a huge amount of variation. Kyra, calm your little wolf. But yeah, if we'd bred cats as much as we bred dogs, you'd see the same thing. And there's still a lot of variation in cats. So take like a Maine Coon and a Sphinx, completely different. Like you can see really different similarities, but we haven't selectively bred them as much as we have dogs. So yeah, it's interesting. Whereas like humans, again, it's going to sound stupid, we haven't selectively bred humans. You don't have like some big overlord saying like, oh, you have this skin tone and you have this skin tone. Let's breed you to make sure your kids have this and this skin tone, and then take those kids with that skin tone and interbreed them to create kids with this skin tone. Or like, oh, you have this shaped nose and you have this shaped chin. Let's interbreed you to make someone with this face shape. We don't have someone actively doing that. So with humans, you get kind of more natural variation, if that makes sense. You're not selectively breeding for certain characteristics and traits, which then get more and more exaggerated as the generations go down.
Wouldn't it be interesting if, and there would be no way to do this ethically in this reality, so if we could like create an AI simulation where you could like, just to see how extreme the variation in humans you could get, like if we could create a simulation just to like, you know, Kesmosha, you looking it up now, is that what Meta's going to be doing, what Facebook's new like Meta and the metaverse, maybe that's what they're going to be doing. It'll be interesting to see like how extreme you can get the variations of people. Obviously you can't do that, I mean that's,
but I reckon we can model it. We could definitely model it, I reckon.
Yeah.
Like, if you do a good enough simulation, you can simulate anything, really. We had, like, genetic, like, simulation programs at uni when we were doing, genetics modules. And it was mostly with, like, insects and stuff. But you'd, like, get all these, like, genetic samples for, like, insects. And then you'd be like, oh, I'm going to breed that one and see what comes out and stuff. And there was always, like, you know, random chance in there and stuff as well. But it was really, really interesting. And then after like 100 generations, you'd have like this data set of like all these like insects that you'd bred. And it was really cool. I enjoyed that stuff. That's quite nerdy, but
in my mind, I'm always just thinking of how can we get Digimon? How can we get Pokemon? But it's so unethical. Like, we won't be able to do it unless maybe they were cyborgs. But even then, robots would need rights. I mean, we're not even there yet, and I'm already on the robots need rights bandwagon. Like AI. I mean, because if you have technology that has a conscience, thinks and feels for itself.
Yeah.
You know, oh, but it doesn't have emotions. Well, that really annoys me because like, what's it called? Like a I don't know.
Have you heard about that like AI thing where, I can't remember the name of it now, but people think they have like actual relationships with this AI? And sorry, my tummy's grumbling, I'm hungry. But people think they have actual relationships with this AI, and they like call it their girlfriend, and they like created these computer generated faces for it, and they like superimpose that on photos with other people and stuff, and they say it's their girlfriend, and they have like these really long in-depth conversations with this AI, and they like get so attached to it and think it's real.
See, I'm against this kind of stuff, and I worry about this kind of stuff because people want to make robots, and then, you know, for whatever reason. But the second reason is usually going to be people also want to be able to fuck robots.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Have you seen, there's like photos going around from this like, it was like a big sex conference, and they're like, oh, the next generation of sex dolls, and they look so lifelike. And there's like one next to this model, and you couldn't tell which was which at first until they started moving, and you were like, it was scary. Like, people are going to put their penis in anything, but it does worry me. Like, if they're going to have objects that are so lifelike, is that just going to encourage mostly men to treat actual women more like objects?
I didn't even think of it from that angle, because I'm thinking of it
The
from
lines are
the
gonna get
AI
blurred.
robot rights angle. Because if you have like, say you have a cyborg and it's got artificial intelligence, and it can think and feel just as much as we can, and it can have its own opinions. I shouldn't say it, because that's dehumanizing. Have their own opinions, you know, come to their own conclusions, and they're also by default just smarter than us because it's artificial intelligence. They're probably IQ points like way up in the 200s or whatever.
Yeah, like higher levels of intelligence, obviously.
Yes, exactly. So then you say you have this robot, this cyborg, whatever, and then they're getting programmed to like fuck a human, when why would they want to in the first place? Like if they've got a hyper intelligent, you know, IQ, they wouldn't want to.
Have you played Detroit Become Human?
No.
Oh my god, you would love it. It's about like androids gaining sentience, and there are like sex robots in that become sentient, and one of them kind of becomes sentient as she's being like used essentially, and she goes crazy because she just thinks she's being raped, and she like kills the guy. It's brilliant.
That's the word I was looking for, sentience. And this is the problem. I'm very worried about this. I'm worried about people just being awful to robots, because, I mean, I don't even think we should be going ahead with a lot of AI technology. We can't even look after animals, like, as a mass. We can't even look after each other as a mass. We don't need to introduce robots into it who are going to be smarter than you, going to be stronger than you. Like, this is how Terminator starts. Someone tried to, like, fuck Skynet, probably. Someone tried to put their willy into, like, the disk drive.
God. Was it floppy disk?
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is actually a genuine concern of mine. I sit around just like, no, we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, but that brings me back to the Yellowstone story.
Right,
So,
somehow.
Okay, yeah, well, what you're saying about, like, people screwing over animals, like, can't take care of them. So, Yellowstone is, I believe, one of the oldest national parks, at least in America, if not the world, and it's huge. And they had a huge population of wolves amongst other animals. So you have bears, you have elks, you have beavers, you have tons of birds, absolutely everything, like, big, massive nature preserve, basically. And back in the, like, late 19th century, a bunch of ranchers set up kind of around the outskirts of Yellowstone. And all these people who own the ranches were like, oh, we're worried about these wolves in Yellowstone. They're going to come and attack our animals, our livestock. They're going to ruin us. So they decided, like, the US government basically, oh, we better kill all the wolves in Yellowstone to save these ranchers. So by something like 1926, all the wolf packs were gone. By 1930, all the individual wolves were gone. And that's when chaos started. Because without wolves there as natural predators, the elk population just shot up, like, rapidly. So more elks mean they're eating more trees and plants and berries and all sorts of stuff like this, which meant that the insect population suffered because they didn't have enough food. The beaver population suffered because they weren't getting enough food. Bears, like, the population of bears went down because they weren't getting enough food. Because the elks were eating so many plants, especially from the river edges and stuff like that, there was, like, tons of erosion. So ground was literally just, like, being eroded away. The rivers got huge. That changed the entire, like, ecosystem in them. Birds weren't having enough food. I think I mentioned insects. Basically, it screwed everything up. Everyone was dying, except the elks, who were just, like, going crazy. So by, like, I want to say, I think the 90s or maybe the 80s, something like that, they were like, oh, we're going to have to introduce wolves back. This is the only thing we can do. And they slowly started introducing them back. Everything slowly went back to normal. The rivers were obviously still a mess. But to this day, like, we're still trying to undo the damage and build up the wolf populations, all because a few ranchers were like, oh, yeah, we're scared of the wolves. And there's this guy who did a study, not in Yellowstone, but in a smaller national park in Germany, where they'd had concerns about the same sorts of things. And they were like, okay, so how much are wolves actually a threat to local livestock and local farms and stuff like that? And they did a, this can sound horrible, they collected all the wolf's poop and analysed it to, like, get an idea of their diet, and they looked through and saw what they were eating, and out of the entire wolf population of this huge national park in Germany, well, huge by Germany's standard, it turns out that out of all the wolves, less than 1% of their diet was coming from stolen livestock. And still, the farmers and ranchers there were killing a huge population of the wolves, and the same thing was happening in America, and it was happening all over the world. And they looked, and it wasn't anything to do with wolves actually killing livestock, but it had to do with media and newspaper headlines at the time. And the more sensational newspapers were being about, oh, beware of wolves, the dangers of wolves, the more wolves were getting killed. So the wolves hadn't done anything wrong, but people decided to kill them anyway, based on fear-mongering, and it ruined entire ecosystems all over the world.
Also, in a lot of fairy tales given to children, there's lots of anti-wolf propaganda, like Little Red Riding Hood.
I have a video on that.
Do you actually?
Yeah. It's quite an old one now, but it was really, really good. It was about, like, the history of the Little Red Riding Hood story and why, like, wolves are the bad guys, and how, like, the wolf is representation of kind of, well, many things. One, it's like the danger of strangers. One, it's the dangers of relationships with men. In others, it's the wolf is like a metaphor for puberty and sexuality and discovering yourself and who you are. And yeah, it's really interesting stuff. You should watch the video.
Once upon a time, many, many years ago, when I thought it was a good idea, I watched no, actually, I still stand by this, because Jordan Peterson did do some good stories on, not stories, he made up some stories. No, he did do some good, like, psychoanalysis on stories and, you know, what they represent, why, like, they're being
that's
told.
Actually quite interesting.
Yeah, it was before all, you know, that stuff. Like the psychological, even his thing on the psychological significance of the Bible and why certain things are said in the Bible and what they actually represent. I mean, I really like that kind of stuff because I think he borrows, like, quite a bit from Carl Jung or whatever. But he said that, like, in, you know, kind of like grim fairy tales, going into a forest is representative of, like, the unconscious. What are you doing?
He sneezed, sorry.
Why are you every podcast he's always just doing something behind the camera. I think he wants to be here. He starts like dancing around. The other week he was like taking his shoes off, like eating a sandwich at one point. He answered his phone during one podcast and just left, and I was like, what is going on? He's getting too comfortable here. I'm going to have to threaten him. This is your about 6th warning by now. So like going into the dark woods in a fairy tale can be representative of
like the dark side of yourself.
Yes, and it's like, it's the great unknown anyway, or like going in the depths of the sea. So like, Jonah in the whale in the belly of the whale in the depths of the sea represents like the unconscious mind.
The women who made the Myers-Briggs test actually based it loosely on Jung's different personality types.
It all ties together in the end, doesn't it? All this shit just comes from like one source usually. Yeah.
It's always Jung or Freud.
Yeah, decent. Yeah. That stuff about...
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I interrupted myself because I was going to say the thing about how the sensationalization of wolves being the bad guy in media that then led to them culling the wolves, and it had this knock-on effect. It's crazy how much there is, in a lot of cases in nature, there's a natural equilibrium. Yeah. And then it just takes... not one person, but one group of people to come along and really fuck things up.
This is like the big question though. So like the interconnectedness of nature is something that like I've been reading a lot about recently, and I think it's really, really interesting. And so it's easy for us to sit here and say like, oh, well, let's try and get a new equilibrium. Let's, get it all in harmony. But how do we define what that is? How do we decide which species thrive and which don't? Because it's easy to say like, oh, well, let's do what happens naturally. But then naturally, some animals do go extinct. Naturally, like, these things do happen. So, again, that's another question. Like, can extinction ever be a good thing?
Sometimes it just happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's just life, really.
Yeah. And let's say, like, one species does go extinct. It might allow another one to thrive. It might now allow another species to evolve and develop and grow and whatever. So... Is extinction just a natural kind of part of evolution in life? And in that case, are our conservation efforts sometimes hindering nature?
I would say no, just because of how out of whack human technology and industrialization has become with like the equilibrium of nature, because we've taken far more than we should have, and it's had like such a vast knock-on effect to the rainforests or to just, fracking. Now that's a thing, and digging up oil and that kind of thing. So I think conservation's always a good thing, because it's trying to undo some of the damage.
No, I do completely agree. I was going to say, on that note, hunting ivory is at like one of the highest points it's been at for the last couple of decades at the minute. It's like 40 elephants are dying a day, purely from hunting them for their tusks. Just terrifying.
Why? I know that sometimes ivory is used in pseudoscience like medicine, so that's a separate thing. But the people that still buy ivory, if I walk into your house and I see you've got an ivory tusk, I'm gonna know you're a cunt, and I'm gonna clock you there. And me just threatening violence with people, like, I'll just leave. I'm gonna know you're a cunt for just like importing some. Is it illegal in this country? Yeah, importing some illegal ivory.
It's illegal in a lot of places.
Yeah,
but do you know what the most trafficked animal in the world is? Pangolin.
I feel like I should have known that.
Yeah, because people, again, they hunt them and they collect their scales and grind them down to use in a lot of ancient Chinese medicine, which, again, complete pseudoscience. There's no actual health benefits to using it, and yet they're the most trafficked animal in the world because people want to grind up their scales. It's heartbreaking because they're gorgeous as well. I love pangolins. They have like these properly like long tongues, and they don't actually have any teeth or anything. So how they eat is they'll find like a hole in a tree or in the ground, and they'll stick their tongue in, and it's like really, really sticky. They have really sticky saliva, and they just wiggle it around in there, and they pick up everything. So they pick up bugs, they pick up rocks, they pick up bits of bark, and then they swallow it all because they can literally like retract their tongue like nearly the length of their body, and then like take it back in. And then they kind of just waddle around for a bit, and it all grinds up in their stomach, and then they get rid of all the bark and the rocks and the everything, which must be painful, let's be honest. But then they have ground up little bugs in their tummy. It's great. They're smart little boys and girls. I can't believe people just like grind them up for medicine. It's sad.
Is there a positive note that we should end on? Some sort of positive animal fact? Oh, is there one?
Well, I'm supporting like a campaign through the World Wildlife Foundation Fund. Which one is it? But through them at the minute, which they're working with elephants in Kenya to try and like put electronic collars on them all so they can track where they're going and what they do and their behavior. And it also means that they are more likely to track like whole herds of elephant that are being hunted by poachers, which means that they can get in there and stop them before they're poached, which is really, really fantastic. So I'm donating money to support that at the minute, and I think it's a really, really good cause. And that's a positive, right?
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well,
elephants.
check out that good cause. And that's all we have time for today. That is the end of this episode of the Alizee Yeezy Show. Thank you, Rachel, for coming along. Make sure you check out her YouTube, her socials, all of that good stuff.
And Kyra's, of course.
And Kyra's. Follow Kyra the dog, Kyra the Staffy. Kyra the Staffy on Instagram. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Spotify and iTunes, because I need a Spotify deal, and then I will save all the elephants with my Spotify exclusivity deal if I ever get it.
I'll hold you to that.
And we'll see you all next time. Bye.